The first time she said she couldn't afford the date, it felt like the world paused between two heartbeats, right there in the middle of a bright afternoon cafe where sunlight spilled across the floor like something hopeful and fragile. The noise of the city faded into a soft blur, and all that remained was the quiet truth behind her words, heavy and honest, the kind of truth people usually hide until it hurts too much to keep inside. It wasn't embarrassment that struck him most in that moment, but the fear underneath it, the fear that honesty might cost her something she was just beginning to believe in. If you believe that kindness deserves second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Wave, because stories like this exist for all of us who still believe small compassion can change a life. His name was Ayan Malik, and he had learned early in life how fragile pride could be when money was involved. He worked as a junior architect in a glass-fronted office that caught the sun every morning, a job that looked impressive from the outside but paid just enough to survive in a city that demanded more than most people could give. Still, Ayan loved the daylight hours, the way mornings felt full of promise, the way afternoons carried a quiet optimism that nights often stole away. He believed daytime was when truth showed itself most clearly, when shadows were shorter and people were braver. He met her on a weekday afternoon, the kind most people rushed through without noticing. Her name was Mihar Qureshi, a name that carried softness and strength at the same time. She worked at a small community library, one of those places slowly disappearing, where the smell of paper and dust mixed with sunlight and silence. Mihar had a calm presence, the sort that didn't demand attention but gently earned it. When she smiled, it wasn't loud or dramatic, but it lingered, like warmth you noticed only after it settled into your bones. Their connection didn't begin with fireworks. It began with shared afternoons, slow walks, and conversations that felt less like talking and more like breathing. They talked about childhood dreams, about how life rarely followed the plans drawn in notebooks, about the quiet pressure to become someone impressive when all you wanted was to be content. Ayan admired her honesty, the way she never pretended to be more than she was. Mihar admired his patience, how he listened without trying to fix everything. But honesty, as gentle as it was, came with weight. Mihar lived with her mother in a small apartment above a tailor shop, sunlight filtering through thin curtains every afternoon. She contributed most of her salary to household expenses, medical bills, and her younger brother's education. There were days she skipped meals without calling it sacrifice, days she counted coins before buying groceries, days she wondered if stability was something meant for other people. Dating, to her, felt like a luxury she couldn't justify, even as her heart quietly reached for it. The afternoon she confessed she couldn't afford the date, the world didn't collapse the way she feared it might. Instead, something unexpected happened inside Ayan. He saw not limitation, but courage. He understood what she meant without needing details. He didn't see her as someone lacking, but as someone carrying more than most. What he wanted, more than a meal or a plan, was continuity. He wanted mornings that turned into afternoons, walks that didn't end because of numbers on a receipt, a connection that didn't measure worth in spending. From that day, their relationship shifted into something deeper, quieter, and more intentional. They began meeting in places where daylight did most of the decorating. Public gardens, benches under flowering trees, roadside tea stalls where cups were shared and time slowed down. They learned how to make moments meaningful without making them expensive. Ayan discovered that joy wasn't louder in fancy places, it was clearer in simple ones. Mihar learned that being cared for didn't always mean being provided for, sometimes it meant being understood. Still, challenges didn't disappear just because affection grew. Mihar wrestled with guilt, with the fear that she was holding him back from a life he deserved. She worried that one day patience would run out, that affection would turn into resentment. Ayan faced his own doubts, the pressure from colleagues and family who equated success with visible wealth and relationships with public displays. Daytime lunches with coworkers often came with careless comments about settling or aiming higher, words that lingered longer than they should have. What kept them steady was consistency. They showed up for each other in daylight, in small but meaningful ways. Ayan brought her coffee during her lunch break, not from a cafe, but brewed at home and carried carefully across town. Mihar listened to his worries about work deadlines and uncertain promotions, offering reassurance without judgment. They celebrated tiny victories, a finished project, a good day at the library, a shared laugh over something trivial. Slowly, their bond became less about dating and more about partnership. The turning point came on a clear afternoon when Mihar received news that her brother had earned a scholarship, easing a burden she had carried quietly for years. Relief washed over her, followed by something unfamiliar, hope that didn't feel borrowed. That same day, Ayan learned his design had been selected for a public project, a recognition that didn't come with instant wealth but promised growth and stability. Neither achievement was grand on its own, but together they felt like the world gently nudging them forward. They didn't celebrate with extravagance. They sat on a hill overlooking the city, sunlight painting everything gold, and allowed themselves to imagine a future that didn't feel like a risk. For the first time, Mihar spoke openly about her fears of being a burden, of not being enough. Ayan, in his own quiet way, made it clear that continuation mattered more to him than comfort, that staying was a choice he made willingly, every day. As months passed, their relationship matured under the steady glow of daytime routines. They learned that love didn't always announce itself loudly, sometimes it whispered through shared responsibilities, mutual respect, and patience. They learned that affordability wasn't just about money, but about emotional capacity, about choosing someone even when life was tight. Mihar grew more confident, no longer shrinking her needs out of fear. Ayan grew more grounded, redefining success in terms of peace rather than perception. There were still difficult days. Unexpected expenses, career setbacks, moments of insecurity that resurfaced without warning. But they faced them side by side, not as problems to solve alone, but as shared realities. Daylight continued to be their ally, reminding them that clarity often came when things were seen plainly, without the distortions of fear or pride. Near the end of one particularly bright afternoon, as they walked through a market buzzing with ordinary life, Mihar realized something profound. The date she once thought she couldn't afford had given her something invaluable, a future built on honesty rather than pretense. And Ayan realized that wanting to keep dating her after that moment wasn't about romance alone, but about commitment to growth, patience, and shared humanity. If this story is touching something inside you, if it reminds you of love that doesn't demand perfection but values persistence, please take a moment to engage with this video. Your likes, comments, and shares help stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Just before we end, a special request to comment below, share whether you believe love grows stronger in simplicity or comfort, because your thoughts might help someone reading silently feel less alone. In the end, their story didn't conclude with a dramatic gesture or a sudden transformation. It ended the way most meaningful stories do, quietly, in daylight, with two people choosing each other again and again. Not because it was easy, not because it was affordable, but because it was real. And sometimes, real is the richest thing we can ever have.